Well, welcome everyone to our Sagittarius open house. Here it is, a little bit late for Sagittarius in January of 2024, but with all the holiday stuff that was going on, we weren't able to do it before 2023 was over. So I'm very excited to see everybody here. For those who don't know, the open houses in the Temple of Witchcraft are these kind of online community times for us to get together as the lead ministers and the staffs of different ministries and just talk a little bit about who we are, what we're doing, what our goals are, and if you want to be involved, what are the best ways that you can be involved. So I'm not anticipating going super long, although now that I look at my notes for today, it's pretty long, so perhaps we will go long. But at any point you need to ask a question, or if you want to wait to the end, we're going to do a little ritual as well. So we'll kind of talk about things and maybe take questions and then have some sharing, do a little break, and then do the Sagittarius Ministerial rite. So, my name is Christopher Penczak. For folks who don't know me, I'm one of the co-founders of the Temple of Witchcraft, and along with that role and being part of the board of directors, I've also been the lead minister of Sagittarius Ministry since the inception of the temple. So you might ask, what is Sagittarius Ministry and what does a lead minister do? So the way that the temple is organized as a public institution is that we basically have 12 areas of division. So as a legal body, we've got 3 founders who kind of hold a spiritual role. That's myself, Steve Kenson, and Adam Sartwell. Then we have a board of directors that changes every 2 years with votes according to our bylaws. And I've served as a member of the board of directors since we began. And I'm currently vice president right now. And then we have our organizations divided into 12 ministries. Legally, in our bylaws, it's known as the Ministerial Church, just because when you're dealing with the government, that word church is something they recognize as something being tax exempt. And we've really allowed that word, even though we think of ourselves as a temple in an esoteric order, because when you're associated with a nonprofit religious organization, your members get a certain level of legal protection that you might not have if you just consider yourself spiritual. So even when people have issues of employment or custody or things like that, we wanted to make sure that our community, at least, and in general witches, but specifically for our community, had that extra level of legal protection that's associated with that. So in our ministerial church, we divide it into 12 sections. And I guess I can't really talk about this without getting a little bit into the history and the ideas of the temple, which I think could be a good thing to think about and review. So when we formed the temple, we realized in traditional witchcraft training, where you'd go through a coven process, and as you went through the ranks through the coven, then the idea and the expectation was as you became a high priestess or high priest, you would hive off and you would start your own coven. And then you'd bring 3 people through, and then they would hive off, and it would kind of be this almost cellular growth. As community has gone on in the world of witchcraft, not everybody who becomes a high priest or high priestess because they want to experience the mystery of things, or they may even deeply want to participate in community, might not be set to be a public ritualist or a teacher or a leader in those ways. And there's some amazing people in our pagan communities, in our witchcraft communities, that have some great skills and have some great interests, but don't always have the outlet for that in a coven structure. So our idea in making this kind of ministerial organization was the essence of what we're doing was offering education. And a big part of education is opportunity to serve the community. And so we created a variety of ways where people could serve the community. And in that, we organized it and divided it into 12 sections based on the zodiac, because we do a lot of things with astrology and planetary magic. And then we kind of looked at, well, what are the ways that we could develop and organize community? And where would different events and where would different interests fall according to the zodiac? And so, from that point on, we then, in the original initial meetings of the temple, had 12 ministers, 12 graduates of our program, become the lead ministers of those 12 areas. And over time, it's kind of organically evolved, and each of the ministers has a certain level of autonomy in how they want to create things. But the general idea behind it in our bylaws and our operating kind of instructions and our vision of things was just like the zodiac is divided, each sign of the zodiac is 30 degrees, and you divide the zodiac into what are called 3 decans, meaning 3 sections of 10 degrees. And each decan had different associations in astrology. We divided each of our ministries into 3 clear areas, And we suggested that each lead minister have 3 deputy ministers that might be able to help them with those 3 areas. Some ministers organize it that way, some ministers organize it in different ways. But this idea that we had these 3 areas. So something was more public, something was more intercommunity, and something was more mystical. And those have changed over the years, but definitely we've had those experiences of working with those 3 areas. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Sagittarius's 3 areas, maybe talk a little bit about our staff, and we have a lot of staff members here today, so if there's anything that they want to share after that, and then we'll see where we're at and where questions are. How's that sound? All right, so what are the 3 areas of Sagittarius ministry? Sagittarius ministry is really the focus on the archetype of the teacher and really the work of the educator in terms of we see witchcraft as a mystery tradition. So we talk about running a mystery school, and we sort of have that. It's difficult in the modern age. If this is, ancient world, I'd like to have the secret mystery schools where we're meeting in caves and everything is very hush hush, but that's not the world we live in right now. We also believe really deeply in access to information and entering into the age of light to be able to have everybody have equal opportunity based on the work that they do and based on the merit that they do. So rather than be based on kind of a secret society or be based on a coven structure only, we really opted for an educational model. So we basically have a school. And so we have academic aspects to the school, but they're all pointing towards mystical education and esoteric experience. So part of it is the difficulties of having to pass in homework and having to, do specific assignments with deadlines and such. But that's really to help us be able to be better organized to help people. Some teachers have worked in different formats over the years with some success and with some difficulties. But that's how we tend to run both the in-person, the online school. We ended up dividing it into an in-person and online school. So when we look at the 3 areas, the public one, the kind of intercommunity one, and then the mystical side, the school has really become a dominant force of that. But the first part of it is to the public. The original vision was that Sagittarius Ministry would organize and administrate religious publishing, the idea of any type of materials that be used for educational texts, materials for the general public, and materials for the temple. So it's interesting that so much of how the temple was formed was actually just based on the books that I wrote called the Temple of Witchcraft series. And interestingly enough, for folks who don't maybe know the history of the temple, this was never my vision. I'm very happy with it. I'm very excited to be about community. But if you asked me 30 years ago where I was going with all of this was not what I envisioned. I envisioned just kind of writing these books that were based on classes that I was doing. And for a while, the vision was people would just go through them on their own, or teachers would use them, or study groups would use them. And they did. But then we started to have people coming together and wanting to form community and wanting to have identity. One of the things that really kind of pushed the formation of the temple was people who studied with me or studied in the traditions of the books didn't really know how to identify other than which for me, that was all I really needed. And although I had other teachers too, so I had other things to identify with. And then for a while, people in the area of New England who had studied with me, who I wasn't particularly connected to or close, were going around calling themselves Penzakians or Christopherians is the other one that was out there. And I was like, oh, that's not really my goal of that. And no knocks to anybody who has a tradition that's named after its founder, but that was not my intention about this, although it was probably not their intention either. But this idea of really wanting to focus on the universality of witch. So we just started using the idea of the temple tradition, and you were studying the temple of witchcraft. And out of that is what kind of grew. But the original impetus and what I think is so at the heart of Sagittarius ministry is writing materials. And the idea of being able to share information now, whether we're sharing information online, whether we're sharing information through written materials and books that are printed, whether now we're sharing information through social media, like events like this, and posts that we do on social media, and whether they be graphics, whether they be interviews, or podcasts, or things like that. There's so many ways that we're kind of disseminating information. So the idea of sharing, publishing, revealing the mysteries to those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear was a big part of Sagittarius ministry. So a big part of what we've done over the history of the temple, and here's another little fun fact of the history of the temple. So the original vision of the temple, some of you might also know that I'm one of the co-owners, along with the founders of the temple, something called Copper Cauldron Publishing. And originally, we just wanted Temple of Witchcraft Publishing. and we wanted it to be a part of the ministry and the service work out there. And there's a lot of religious institutions that have publishing wings, but not too many of them had somebody who had prior success as a personality, as an author. So when we're going through the whole process of, really going through the acceptance with the state and then with the IRS federally, they had this whole process of wanting to separate the publishing company because they feared, and there's people out here that do that they feared that the nonprofit aspect and the publishing aspect was some type of scam to not want to pay taxes on things. So rather than see it as a religious publishing wing, we decided to set up a separate publishing company, and then we just donate a lot of the proceeds of many books back to the temple. So it is really supported, and its mission is, and primarily we're looking to support community rather than try to be a big publishing house that, you might see the other ones that are out there. That's never really been our goal. We just really want to put the books that are furthering our mission. So primarily a lot of the books are from myself and from Adam Sartwell. And we did a lot with Lori Cabot, who was one of my first teachers, we'll talk about before the time is over. But that's a little bit of the history of why Copper Cauldron is separate from the temple, and why we've kept it separate since. And then what we've done in terms of publishing as part of Sagittarius Ministry is offered quite a few books that are full fundraisers for the temple. So one of the first was Taste from the Temple, which was sort of like a community church cookbook that the amazing Dawn Hunt was able to gather our disparate recipes and things that didn't quite go together and put it together in a really beautiful way. So that's Taste from the Temple. Then we did an anthology of plant magic called The Green Lovers. We did an anthology of the ancestors, which is particularly important to Sagittarius Ministry, called Ancestors of the Craft. We did a book that was basically a documentary of our first sacred retreat, which is also a part of Sagittarius Ministry, called The Waters and Fires of Avalon. And then the last one we did in 2014 was Foundations of the Temple, just kind of a nice overview of a lot of things that are specific to what the Temple of Witchcraft is. And all of those are 100% fundraisers for the temple. Whatever profits we make go right to the temple. Things that are not overtly seen, but are definitely a part of Sagittarius Ministry, are all our educational materials. So if you do study in the mystery school, we continually update and expand our Book of Shadows. Along with the Book of Shadows is for each lesson a syllabus that gives both the assignments and extra assignments and tips and different ideas to it. And then over the years, what has evolved as a part of our community project is what we call the Wisdom Lectures. And the Wisdom Lectures are really an attempt to try to look at, if you were studying in a coven and you were meeting once or twice a week with your coven and you're really immersed, because one of the things that's hard to understand when you study witchcraft, it's a lifestyle change. It's a lifestyle commitment. It's a way of being. It's not just a class you take and you do the homework whenever you want. I mean, for some people it is, but that's not our intention. Our intention is really to kind of help people make that transition into a new way of being. And so I realized that, I've been very blessed to have a lot of mentors and teachers who I just sat around and had coffee with a lot of times, or we'd do different work together, we'd be setting up for rituals. They'd be these little wisdom nuggets that would be passed on. They would talk about a particular book. They talk about a particular teacher. They would talk about a particular experience. And they would just kind of pass something on. And it didn't always fit in a lesson. Or you get it through discussions, if you were in a smaller coven setting. So one of the things we tried to do in the academic setting was kind of gather up little bits of wisdom, not only from myself, but from other ministers and other students too. And we put together a series of, by each degree, wisdom lectures. And then we've had different ways we've disseminated them, but right now you get a little PDF at the beginning of every month that's just different lectures. And they can be just 2 lines, or they could be several paragraphs. They could even be an article. So that's been a big part of disseminating, writing down, and keeping records of our information. For those who are initiates in the temple, at the end of every year, particularly if you're in the online school, you get a list of initiate resources, different links that help you download a ton of stuff that's out there, and a list of videos and list of particular rituals that are not made public. And including, we have a bunch of private audio and video recordings, but we also have a bunch of public audio and video recordings. For those of you who just participated in the 13 Days of Yule, those are some of the public recordings. We have recordings, particularly during our COVID times. We did a series of healing temple meditations, and we've did various YouTube and Facebook videos that have been archived. So those are some different educational materials that are out there. We continue to write blogs. I try to do a blog at least once a month about things that are going on in the community, and different students and ministers continue to write. So this is kind of in coordination with Gemini Ministry. And then another fun aspect of education was our calendar fundraiser. And so since 2022, we've put out a calendar that's a fundraiser for the temple, but also has a lot of information to our sacred calendar from the specific point of view of the Temple of Witchcraft. So it'll talk a lot about our mighty dead's feast days, the days that they were born, and the days that they died, particular astrological rituals, and particular folklore that might be specific to the things that we practice. So those are our main ways for that first step of kind of disseminating information, particularly to the public. Another kind of side project we have with the public that wasn't in our original mission statement, but really speaks to the temple and how we want to make room for whatever people feel is their mission. So once the temple was founded and we had these 3 areas for all the different ministries, I had a graduate come to me and say, "Oh, I really feel like my mission is sacred travel and sacred retreat and pilgrimage. And where does that fit in the temple?" And so we had to sit down and look at, the different 12 signs and where might that fit. There's a couple places it might fit, but particularly we're doing it for educational purposes. And when we think of Sagittarius in astrology, Sagittarius is the philosophical education traveling far and wide. Sagittarius is mutable fire, so it's kind of always on the move. So we decided to put sacred travel and retreats under our domain of Sagittarius. So we've done international retreats, and the first one we did was Glastonbury. Since then, we've been from Glastonbury and Wales and Scotland. It just happened in 2023. And then we've had some USA retreats too, basically focused on the idea of the elemental temples. So we did the fire temple in Arizona. We did the water or the sea temple in Bar Harbor, Maine. We've done several non-elemental retreats to New Orleans to kind of just share the magic that's there, because that's been particular to quite a few ministers that are in the temple, wanting to share that interplay of paganism and a lot of the folk traditions of New Orleans. And then we're looking to do the Earth Temple, possibly in Mount Shasta, California. And we're going to do an air temple, possibly in Colorado. So those are sort of our plans coming up, and we want to do an international trip to Ireland soon. And those are open to the public. We open them first to initiates, but anybody can come, and often initiates bring their spouses that are not necessarily involved in this, but it's a great way to kind of have that family connection. So that's our kind of public first third of Sagittarius. Our second third is the organization and administration and teaching of students enrolled in the mystery school and seminary programs. Wow, what does that mean? So when we talk about the mystery school, we kind of divide the original books that I used that became the foundation of the temple tradition. There were 6 books. The first 4 are based on the elements, and in the order they go, the first one is fire, the second one is earth, the third one is water, and the fourth one is air. And then the 5th level is split between 2 books. We can think of it as spirit active and spirit passive, or we can think of it as the mysteries of the goddess and the god. But one is a really intense view of the descent of the goddess into the underworld, and the second is very much about the hero's journey through the 12 signs of the zodiac. And the idea is those 2 formulas put together are both formulas used in the traditional mystery schools to really bring someone into the greater mysteries. And so we separate the first 4 as our mystery school, and they're very much about your personal work, some community work, but mostly your personal work. And then the seminary, and we specifically use that word even though we know it's not the equivalent of a master's degree if you go to a university level. But in dealing with the government, if you get something approved early on in your nonprofit status, then they can't take that word away from you. So we get it approved as a seminary. And so we hope to expand things, and there's some members of our community that would love to see us have something that's the equivalent of a master's degree. I don't know if that'll be in my lifetime, and that's not my particular goal, but if another minister wants to make that their goal, I support that. But I'm really focused on, for the seminary program, of how to help people learn how to work better in community, how to apply the greater inner mysteries to their service work in the community, because I do think service work is a glue that helps bring all these lessons together. I think a lot of people think of themselves as great spiritual masters because they're doing all this internal spiritual work. And then as soon as they're really put against somebody that's difficult or obstinate or challenging, all that spiritual mastery goes out of the window. So I think the cauldron of community is a really good way to kind of, I won't even say test yourself, but to really reflect back upon where you're at and how much you've integrated a lot of these lessons. I know for me, it's been a great challenge, but it's been a good challenge. I think other spiritual traditions that have, whether it be the coven or whether you're in a Buddhist or Hindu temple, or whether you're in any type of circle or community of fellow practitioners, what Buddhists call the Sangha, the idea, Sangha, excuse me, the idea of the community of practitioners getting together, that becomes this great way of reflecting the lessons back upon you, having great support by people who are on the path who understand, but it keeps you from being in isolation, because in isolation in the magical path, there's times that it's necessary, but it's times when it's also unnecessary and can drive you a little crazy. You can either have an overinflated sense of ego or an underinflated sense of ego, thinking, you know, you have no one to talk to. So you might think you're doing terribly when you're doing really great. Or you might think you're doing really great when you're not. So it's nice to have those kind of checks and balances when you're in community with other people on the path who can recognize wisdom and also gently, and sometimes maybe not always so gently, say, hey, I think you might be going off track here. So that's how we separate the mystery school and the seminary, but they are part of a continuous program, a continuous theme, a continuous tradition. So as part of the work of Sagittarius Ministry, it's also, these classes are sort of divided into those 3 levels. So we have some classes that are just strictly public classes, both online and in person. We might have single classes. For many years, we're doing single one-time classes at the beginning of our New Hampshire Sabbats, in-person classes that people, we have a lot of guest teachers come out for it. People are welcome to offer short series in the temple, or even long series in the temple. We've had some really successful long series in the temple. Probably one of our most successful classes that we've done under Sagittarius Ministry has been Kitchen Witchery of our amazing Karen Ainsworth. So she's been done it repeatedly. Yes, and I'm being reminded that Temple Hearth is also under Sag Ministry. Thank you very much for reminding me about that, Debbie. I appreciate that. So yeah, and that's part of the public classes, because Temple Hearth and even a little bit of Temple Fest's education aspect of it were public ways of reaching the community. So we have our short series, we have our long series like Kitchen Witchery, we have Temple Fest and Temple Hearth that have class components to it. We have day and weekend festivals. We've had other long series, some ones that I do like Wheel of the Year, Path of the Moon, Mysteries of the Tarot, Magical Astrology, and our newest one that we're doing this year is A Year of Nine Mothers. Those are all open to the general public. It's not always recommended that the general public take it. Like if that's your first witchcraft class, you probably don't want to jump into, you know, the Year of Nine Mothers or a really deep astrology class. So often we'll say recommended witchcraft 1 or 2, but it's not required. People can take whatever they'd like. And we've got a couple other weekend intensives coming up besides our Temple Hearth Festival. We also have an interim class that's come out in the last couple of years, came out during our COVID times. We realized not everybody who wants to deeply practice wants to go through the mystery school process. Or sometimes people are in a place in their life where the mystery school process is just a little too demanding, and they find that it creates a lot of tension if they have to have, you know, something in every week, and then we might say, hey, you didn't do this so good, so can you repeat this exercise? And or you had this exercise missing, and that can get a little frustrating for people, particularly if they're only doing it for their own self-development. So we created a series of classes. It's about 20 lessons called the Pillars of the Witch's Temple. And the Pillars of the Witch's Temple is a go at your own pace, really about the culture and the magic of the temple, but it doesn't have the initiatory pressure of having to kind of build up a current and build up a charge over the course of a year, and having that feedback and having those deadlines. So for people who want to study the temple tradition, but they just want to do it at their own pace, Pillars of the Witch's Temple is probably the best way. And then it gets into the deeper mysteries of witchcraft 1 through 4. And then our seminary of Witchcraft 5. And along with our seminary, we've got quite a bit of new advanced educational material, a lot of it in cooperation with Liber Ministry, including our recent Psychology and Magic class, a year-long class called Professional Witch. And over the years, we've done quite a bit of other advanced work. For a number of years, I was doing what we called Ministerial Dark Moons, and it was a place to kind of experiment with deeper mysticism. We've been doing things like the Society of the Temple. It's really where my heart is right now. There's sort of advanced classes for Witchcraft 3 and higher, and that is a requirement because they do have a lot of in-depth magical, mystical detail, and they can put a lot of pressure on your energy system. But basically, it's taking the material from the 3 Rays of Witchcraft book and expanding it. And essentially, it's a 9-year program. So not only do we have the 5 classes of the mystery school, but if you took everything in Society of the Temple, it's 9 years. We had some ambitious folks who are in the room right now who decided to take the 9-year program in 3 years, and they did amazingly well. Not everybody has done amazingly well with that, but they've done amazingly well with that. So basically, it's the idea of each of the 3 rays, which we can just call them first ray, second ray, and third ray, each has 3 years. And so you can mix and match them as long as you kind of proceed in ascending order. Or you can take, year one of ray one, year one of ray two, year one of ray three, and then keep going that way. Or you can kind of barrel through with just one particular ray. You can just do one ray and do it in 3 years, or you can mix and match with the other colored rays. But basically, the idea of the Society of the Temple is bringing the magical system into greater adepthood. What does it mean to be a magical adept? What does it mean to balance the key words of the 3 rays? Our will, love, and wisdom. What is it to balance those points? And we use a lot of the folklore, particularly of British traditional witchcraft. So we talk about things like the sovereign, the seer, and the sorcerer. We talk about the horseman and the miller and the weaver. We use a lot of kind of folkloric imagery, particularly from British craft, and see how that applies to these higher mysteries. We've done classes on the mighty dead. And we've done classes, one of our ministers, Deborah Stellhorn, did the witch's soul through the witch's pyramid, along with Don Korstoff and Oceana LeBlanc. So we've had lots of ways of people wanting to experience things kind of on a deeper level. So that kind of inner mysticism of making contact. So that third aspect of Sagittarius ministry is really about connecting to the kind of the forces, the spiritual entities, the inner world teachers. So I know that was a lot. Does anybody have any questions before we like to talk a little bit about why we do what we do, but that was a lot of technical info. So if you have a chat, you can put it, or a question you can put in the chat room, or if you want to raise your hand, be happy to call upon you.
I don't see any questions in the chat, but I did want to clarify that I now do see Temple Hearth in your notes. So that was not on you, that was on me.
Always
For
good to give you a little reminder.
so the recording does not have you forgetting it when I just didn't read it.
No worries. I always like a good reminder. All right, well, let's talk, I guess, a little bit about why we do what we do and the ways that we do it. So in the mystery school, we have both in-person and online classes, which I will say at first was a little controversial for me. I love, and I am probably the most non-traditional traditionalist out there, which is kind of a weird paradox there, but I'm definitely about paradox. Although I'm avant-garde and wanting to push the limits and wanting to learn new things, I'm also very traditional about things. And I realize I've set up a fairly non-traditional format. So how do you stay traditional when you set up a very non-traditional format? And I think that's the quest of my life, right? So, in a lot of this work, I really preferred mouth to ear. I think books are great, and I definitely obviously wouldn't write them if I didn't think that they were important. And sometimes books are the only resource a person has. So I would never want to take that away. And I've learned so much through books, but I think I also have had context because I've had teachers. So I could understand the context of what I was reading through the teachers and mentors that I've had. And so how the school sort of evolved was pre-Temple as an organization. So for many years, I was teaching. So the first classes of the Temple of Witchcraft series started in the late 90s. I want to say the first class was 1997. So that's how long I've been teaching these classes in some form. And the first few classes, those often became some of the leaders of what became the Temple of Witchcraft organization. But there was a good 12 years before that happened. And so the classes grew in popularity. The notes that I had went from like 7, 10 pages to a little thicker binder, to a thicker binder, to a thicker binder. And eventually someone said, you should put this in a book. And so I did. At that time, I'd written 2 books for Wiser. So I decided to put them into books and thought, well, the best way if you can't get a teacher, because that was the big complaint in the late 90s, is that, there were more seekers than there were covens. Or just because you found a coven didn't mean that coven was a good match for you. So I wrote both the books as I taught the classes. And I recorded a series of meditations, and graciously Llewellyn was interested in the whole series and put out all the meditations for it as well. So I thought, okay, that's it. You know, people have the information, they can do what they want. I was traveling and teaching and touring at the time to support the book. So I would talk about the books. I would lead some basic meditations, and people were like, oh, when are you going to come back to teach more? So suddenly I found myself in a position where I was traveling a lot and teaching weekend intensives. So imagine trying to cram one of those books in 3 days over a weekend. But I did. And then I realized that wasn't quite working. I mean, people who had some experience walked away with it pretty good, but people who were brand new, that was a lot of information to take on. So then I started doing distance apprenticeships. So if you took a weekend with me, then I would work a couple months with you and people. And this was back in the days of, email was still around, but I had quite a number of people who wrote me out longhand letters. And I printed out letters and I mailed them back to them. And if they had email, I would do email. And if they were a phone person, I would do a phone call with them. But we started doing the apprenticeships through that way. And then after doing that for a number of years, I said, well, I think I need to organize this a little bit better. So it started to become a school. And so for maybe 3 years before the temple was officially founded, I had an online school, but almost everybody in the online school was somebody I had met during one of those weekends. But then the interest sort of outstripped that. So started letting in people who didn't take those weekends. I started to restructure the classes from the very beginning. My aim at that time was to record in-person classes so people would have a sense of what it was like to be there and listening to that recording. And then go on and review their homework and offer feedback and things like that. And then as we formed the temple as an official organization, a lot of the temple formed around the people who had taken those classes and using the temple as a way to support the people that are in the classes in public service and community service, because they weren't in covens, and many of them were not even in communities locally, because there might not have been a witchcraft community locally. So a lot of that is what kind of evolved from that. So in essence, from the very beginning, I was trying to provide a non-coven experience that is compatible in education to the intensity of a coven experience. So it might not have the same social level of intensity, although some years it has. But the idea that we wanted to, give you that level of experience and that training to really make what I talked about before as this lifestyle change. Learning witchcraft is not something you just kind of take as a weekend workshop and then don't internalize. Although I will say my own training with Laurie Cabot was very rapid. And there were people in those classes that internalized that and it became a lifestyle change. And that there were people who didn't, and it didn't. So that was the intention. I was working for those people who wanted to make a change in their orientation to their world and to live a magical life, to live a true life as a witch. And not saying this was the only way to do it, but saying that this was one of the ways if you didn't have access to that group. And if someone said, oh, I had a coven by me, I'd be like, well, then try that first. Make sure, work with somebody in person if you can. I think that is always good. So, part of the classes were academic, part of it was personal development, part of it was spiritual understanding on the magical road. Like in art, and this has become a challenge as the years have gone by because I think people study classical arts less growing up. So for those of us who had piano lessons growing up or dance lessons or art lessons, there was that weirdness of doing something really creative that you loved, but also sometimes getting feedback that you didn't like. So like a good art teacher, and ironically enough, my first witchcraft mentor before Laurie Cabot, although she has a very similar story to Laurie Cabot. So when I talk about her and don't name her, her name is Lynn, although she's not public, so I won't share her last name. But when Lynn first trained me and first shared things with me, she was my art teacher from when I was 7 years old to about 15 years old. And then she became a good friend of the family. So I understood that relationship between artistic mentor. And sometimes she'd be like, yeah, this is how you can improve that work. It's not good. And you had to sort of take that and realize, oh, she's just kind of sharing technique, what you do with the technique. But if you've not been able to grasp the technique, then sometimes you get some harsh feedback. So like art, like dance, like music, there's feedback and challenges. And it's both personal because it's something dear to your heart, but it's also impersonal. The person who's giving you the feedback is not making a judgment of you as a person. They're just making a recognition as someone who's been practicing this. This is how you could go about this that would be better or different, or you misunderstood something. So trying to bring that level of feedback to it. Sometimes people take classes and they just want the feedback to be you're great. And I think that's great if that's what you want, but that's not what I'm offering. So understanding that's a part of the kind of mystery school. We do a lot of classes that are much more social. but in the mystery school, it has more of that art and science aspect to it. And then to realize that it was a true training that, a lot of people, and again, when I started, I was much this way too. So I'm not knocking it, but I'm just saying it's not what I want to do now. So a lot of people take something for 3 days and then proclaim themselves as a master. They'll take a tarot intensive and never have picked up tarot cards before, and then suddenly they're a certified tarot reader ready to handle your toughest problems. And maybe they are, who am I to say? But most who I've met who are really great readers have had years of experience, multiple points of view, multiple mentors, whether it be online or through books. So the idea that we're not trying to rush through things, even though it's a 5-level course, it takes a lot longer than 5 years to do because you need some time in between to kind of integrate. The idea that you should take breaks in between and try to incorporate things. It's not about rushing through to get a title or to get a name or to say that I'm done, although some of us feel we need to for particular circumstances. But it's that idea that you're really trying to make a big shift in yourself internally, and sort of like therapy. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm giving myself 2 years in therapy to be perfect." It's not how it works. It's a process and it unfolds over time, and it's different for everybody. So that was what a lot of um, we're seeking to do with the mystery school and how we're working with it. So, in terms of community, once you get involved in this, we do see it as a tradition. We do see it as having an egregore. We do see it as having a group consciousness and group soul. And so there's certain things that we shared just with initiates. So once you finish level 1, you're an initiate. Once you finish level 5, you're considered to be a high priest, high priestess, high priestess, what we call a ministerial member. And then beyond that, there's ways to be ordained to be a legal representative of the temple. As for initiates, we have things like our initiates Facebook group, and which is runic stones, divination study group, an amazing astral travel study group hosted by Christian, who's in our chat room. Hey, Christian. The idea of the Pillars of the Witches Temple as a Discord server for people. And then we start getting into the inner world aspect of Sagittarius ministry. The idea of working with the spirits in general, working with the spirits of our tradition, working with the currents of initiation to change and catalyze yourself. Specifically, what the teaching ministry does as Sagittarius is working with what we see as the inner plane teachers, what some traditions have called the ascended masters, the secret chiefs, the inner plane adepts, the idea that contacted orders, magical orders that have spiritual support from the other world, attract or invite different entities. Some of them may be gods and spirits. Some of them may be post-human enlightened masters. And particularly in the witchcraft tradition, what we call the mighty dead or the hidden company are the enlightened masters of the traditions of witchcraft. So a lot of the work that we do is to work with those inner plane teachers. And a lot of the weird things you might say, "Hey, Christopher, I've never seen this in a witchcraft tradition. Where'd you get that before?" Usually it's a transmission from the mighty dead. Usually I would love to take credit for it, but I don't think I'm that smart about it. I think the spirits have come forward to say, these are patterns you can work with. These are ideas, these are teachings that we want to put forward in partnership with you. And I think that's really what the whole temple has been about. So we've done things in terms of encouraging people to do personal work with the mighty dead. In our advanced education, we had a whole year-long mighty dead class that myself and Debbie Stellhorn did together. And as part of Sagittarius and Scorpio ministry, we've done things that are about the benefactors of the Temple of Witchcraft, the idea that each of the mighty dead will be allies, benefactors for us in our magical working. We remember that their minor feast day is their birthday, and their major feast day, their greater feast, is their death day. And so we'll post in our initiates group, and it can be an opportunity to learn more about them. Like we mentioned, the calendar that we put out has those recorded. So if you want to work with it personally, you can work with it on the calendar. It'll mention each of those figures. And a new one we've been doing in a joint cooperation with Leo Ministry has been the Magical Art Series. So every few months we host a person to teach about a magical artist. We pick one of their magical works and we meditate upon it. But those are a mighty dead from the kind of creative view. So they're teachers through art. And maybe there'll be teachers through music and such going on. But we've had some really fun ones. I did the first one for the artist named Joffre. And we did the Rite of Pan, or his triptych of Pan, which is this really cosmic view of Pan that I love. So those are some of the things that we offer as Sagittarius Ministry as part of the education. So does anybody have any questions about any of that? So I'd like to talk about how you can be involved in Sagittarius ministry and then open it up to any of our staff members, current or former, who might want to share any of their experiences. No pressure. You don't have to say anything you don't want to, but just kind of an opportunity for those who are participating. I'll talk a little bit about the staff and the different levels that we have in the staff. So how can you be involved in Sagittarius ministry? Well, the most easy way you can be involved in Sagittarius ministry is to take a class. If you've taken a class in the Temple of Witchcraft that the Sagittarius ministry is hosted, so most of our general education classes tend to fall under Sagittarius ministry, then you have participated in Sagittarius ministry. How exciting. So if you want to do something a little bit more active, particularly if you've been in any of the initiate classes, you've probably received the Sagittarius ritual that we're going to do before this day is over. So you can do that as a part of your personal work. Generally, we tend to do it when the moon is in Sagittarius or when the sun is in Sagittarius, but you can do it anytime you want to connect to the spirit of Sagittarius, which is a spirit in the temple. Each of the ministry spirits unique to the temple have their own name. And so the spirit of Sagittarius is Sakaro, the teacher. We've had a number of people who have a personal relationship with Sakaro. Others like to focus on the mighty dead as a whole, and some like to focus on specific mighty dead. And we'll be having more classes coming this year, working with specific mighty dead. And the first mighty dead we're going to probably talk about in that series is actually the blessings and benefits that my dear mother has offered to the temple. She's passed on now, but Rosalie Penczak I consider to be the founder, one of the spiritual founders, spiritual mothers of the temple, because she provided the place for all of these things to happen, and the social time and the parties for all the things where the first covens and the first groups in our community got together. So I think that'll be on her Greater Feast Day on May 3rd this year. If you are qualified and you'd like to teach classes, particularly we encourage people who are graduates of Witchcraft 5, first and foremost, if they want to teach. But again, we realize not every graduate of Witchcraft 5 necessarily wants to be a teacher. So there's no pressure. You don't have to teach. But if you are a graduate of the mystery school and the seminary and you want to teach, that's a great way you can be involved. If you're not a graduate of the mystery school, but you have a particular area of expertise, or you have a particular level of training to teach, we welcome proposals and we can talk about that. So if you're like, oh, I'd really like to share this with the community, we do tend to discourage people who we don't know from coming in and saying, hey, I'm going to be a teacher just because we don't know you. We do offer opportunities at a lot of our festivals like Temple Fest to invite outside teachers from other communities and other traditions who have a reputation as teachers and leaders in their own communities. But if there's something particularly you wanted to offer, then you could send me a proposal. And the easiest way you can reach me for Sagittarius things, and this goes the same for all the lead ministers, it's just Sagittarius@templeofwitchcraft.org. And that's my temple email for any of this type of work. As an initiate, if you're an initiate, you can participate in any of the groups. So you don't have to continuously take classes. Once you're an initiate, once you're a member for life, as long as you don't do something to put yourself in bad standing. And the ways you'd put yourself in bad standing is to, really be disrespectful or harmful to somebody else in community. Otherwise, if you're pretty chill, we're pretty chill. But if you participated in things like the astral study travel group or, any of our initiates groups, those could be wonderful ways to participate continuously in education. For those of you who might want to be a little bit more deeply involved, and again, this goes for Witchcraft 5 graduates, as a ministerial member, particularly if you think you might want to teach in the mystery school in person, you can apply to be a teaching assistant, or you can ask to be a class administrator. So what are the differences between those two? They're two similar but different jobs. A class administrator helps administrate any of the classes that are non-degreed classes. So our Wheel of the Year class has a class administrator. Our Path of the Moon class has a class administrator. Our Mysteries of the Tarot or astrology class has a class administrator. So that's the person that just helps us with all the details and shows that you can help us with organization and administration. I know it's a drag, but a big part of leading a school is a lot of administration. You have to keep track of a lot of things. To be a teaching assistant is to have specific responsibilities with the students in the mystery school. So a teaching assistant helps the dean and assistant dean and myself as the teacher in the online school. And we've had various experiments with teaching assistants in the in-person schools with in-person individual teachers to help manage the students, to help give feedback, to help disseminate information. But that's a very specific and very serious thing. So unless you're really serious about teaching and administrative work, it's not something you just want to do for fun because it's a lot of work. But if people want to participate in Sagittarius ministry, that's a way. And if you become an ordained minister and you have those teaching experiences, or you tell us beforehand that you'd like to be a teacher in person in the mystery school, and as you apply to be an ordained minister and you get that approved, you can also be approved to be an in-person teacher. But you can't teach these classes if you've not gone through that whole process. And if you've been an online student, we're really looking for you to show us that you can do administration, to show us that you can handle a level of authority or power seemingly over students, because we want to make sure people don't abuse that. And we want to understand that you understand what the system is about and what you're actually teaching, and you have a certain level of mastery over the topics, which comes with time. We don't expect you to graduate and know everything in all 5 levels, but we want to see that you're really working to integrate this all and that you can transmit it to others. If you're studying with an in-person teacher and you want to teach, then we want their approval. We want them, your teacher, to say, I think this person would be a great teacher and this is why. So you can be ordained and not be a teacher. Just because you get ordained doesn't mean you're automatically a teacher. Or if you find an ordained minister in the temple and you think they're going to be my teacher, not all ordained ministers are teachers in the temple. Some people get ordained just because they want to do weddings and funerals. And that's totally fine too. So that's, there's no pressure to it. But you can find a list of all of our ordained teachers on the website. And so if you're looking to see who's teaching, but not all of them have current classes going on. So just because you find somebody near you doesn't mean that they're teaching right now. And so sometimes people think, well, I demand a class because this is the closest teacher to me. That's not how it works. It's, when they want to teach and when they're ready to teach. Just because they have one student that's ready to teach, it's a lot of work that goes into it. So I know for me in person, unless I have a group of 6, I'm not going to teach. And ideally, I like to have a group of 12 because people drop out because it's a tough program. So those are the ways to participate in Sagittarius ministry and a little bit more of all that we do and all the working parts of it. I'll just talk a little bit about our staff and then open it up for our staff to be a chance to share. So as I'm the lead minister, and then I talked about those 3 divisions, and we have kind of 3 decans of our zodiac. We have 3 deputies. So we have one deputy position that's really kind of split between our dean and our assistant dean. So we have our dean of students, Stevie Grant, and our assistant dean of students, Karen Ainsworth, and they pretty much run the school. I may be the teacher of the school, but they pretty much run the school. Obviously, I'm part of that, but I would not be able to do any of that without them. So 3 cheers to both of you. Thank you so much. And, I know sometimes people will say, oh, this is really tough administratively, or, this is a really technical or serious thing. I ask them to do that. So when people think, oh, Christopher's being nice and, the rest of the staff is really being hard-lined about things, I ask them to do that so I can do the other things that are going on. So I'll be hardlined with you too if you need me to be hardlined. But in general, we try not to be hardlined. We just try to be really clear in our documents. And when we say reread something, it's because usually the answer of what you're asking might be in something we sent. But we're trying to do more videos and things like that because we know not everybody absorbs everything through reading. But if you're going to do the online school, there's a level of reading you have to do. And if that's not good for you, then maybe the online school is not a great match. For the administrative side of everything. And I'm hoping I will not lose her. She does more and more work in other ministries as she's now become a lead minister in her own right for Libra ministry. We have Deborah Stellhorn. She's the administrative coordinator deputy. So she keeps me on track on all things that are not mystery school related and keeps me going. And she'll be helping me with the ritual today. So that is always amazing. And then for our third deputy, we have Simon Hewitt, who is our tech witch. He's the one who sets up all the classrooms. He's the one that deals with all the kind of electronic administrative stuff. He kind of keeps all the electronic world, which I know very little about, going. And I can just send him an email and he'll be like, I'm on it, and it happens. So thank you very much, Simon. Thank you very much, Debbie. Thank you very much, Karen and Stevie. I guess I'm going to pause there and say if there's anything you guys want to share as deputies in the ministry. Don't all talk at once.
Yeah, I'll go.
Sure, Simon.
Yeah, so one of the perks of graduating witchcraft, the seminary school Witchcraft 5, is that you're able to get a templeofwitchcraft.org email address, and that's so that you can do the work with the temple in that context. And I'm also a deputy in Gemini for a similar role in the sense that I manage the email systems, I manage everything Google. Basically, we switched to Google Workspace and so on. So you'll be getting invites from me if you join the mystery school and for certain programs. And just generally, you can reach out to me at infotech, INFOTECK rather, at templeofwitchcraft.org if you are having issues, and I'm always happy to help.
Thank you, Simon. Anyone else? Debbie's got her hand up, and then we'll do Stevie.
I just wanted to say that I very much love being a deputy in the Sagittarius ministry, because I love education and I love working with the Mighty Dad, and it's just a nice little place for me. But I feel like going through the mystery school was a lot of like learn through experience that's necessary, in teaching and doing all the other things in Sagittarius ministry. So just shout out for the mystery school, and shout out to those who want to continue to be mentors, just to stay in touch, because I know we need mentors in the mystery school, and I'm still a mentor, and I really enjoy doing it because you get to see how the material is updated, and you get to know people as they're going through the mystery school. So you get to know new initiates who are coming through, and that's a really good way to be involved in Sagittarius ministry. So that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you, Debbie. And Stevie.
Hi. Yeah, I think when you were talking about all the things to do for Sagittarius, in the mystery school, we also have mentors.
That's right.
And so, yeah, and Debbie just mentioned being a mentor. Some ministerial members are mentors. People in Witchcraft 3 and higher are required to be mentors as part of their student learning. And occasionally we have mentors from in-person classes who, at the level of Witchcraft 4 or higher, for them, who have asked and been approved to mentor in the mystery school. So just wanted to add that as another
Thank you.
thing, that opportunity, so to speak. Yeah. Okay.
That's a great point. Thank you. And Karen, anything you want to say?
Yeah, just really reiterating what I think like everyone else has said. I mean, the training really does change your life, and it kind of empowers you and gives you so many tools to, just do what you love. You clear out so much crap with all the shadow work and stuff like that, and you really focus on what you want to do. And sort of the 6 months in between, and like some people don't like that. I must admit, when I first started doing it, it was like, what? I've got to wait 6 months for my next class. But even now, I'm not sure how many times I've gone through it now as a mentor, as a TA, and as the assistant dean. You still learn stuff. It's amazing, Even like you think Witchcraft 1, the easy stuff, and you'll have somebody come along and do one of the exercises, and you're, what? I never thought of doing it like that. That's fantastic. And sort of as we help mentor and take care of people, we learn from them as well, which is it's just a brilliant, everything about it is amazing. And then like the Society of the Temple as well, it's kind of, I've always had this saying, like, if you don't do the work does you. And you need to be careful when you're making your first initiation vows, and that the gods and the mighty dead and everyone is looking for you to stand up and deliver. So be careful what you promise.
Thank you, Karen. And my next part was going to talk a little bit about, just to say who's part of our work for Sacred Travel. And Karen's one of our leads for Sacred Travel for our UK events. Is there anything you want to share about that, Karen?
No, I mean, again, that's can be life-changing as well. I mean, I just love I mean, I love coming across to America. You go to different countries and to experience that. And, you know, I had some friends initially like come across to the UK. If like, you know, down the Pacino, we used to go on like so many amazing adventures. And it's like, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to share this with other people? And we had one last year, the Garden of the Gods with Christopher. And it just started a whole raft of like different work and different connections and so on. And it's just an incredible container that's just, it's very different from what you might do in the mystery school, but it's just, it's so lovely to come together in sacred space, on sacred land as well, and put some of the things that you've learned, like the Garden of the Gods, it was all plant spirits. It was so much like our Witchcraft 3 work, and just like, you know, to have that time, just amazing. So we're looking forward to yeah, Ireland and perhaps Italy.
Yes. As we have more initiates across the world, we have more opportunities of places to visit. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. Thank you, Karen. And our next US one is going to be New Orleans, with Ashara being one of our coordinators there. Is anything you'd like to share, Ashara?
Sure, let me find my unmute button. Hi, everyone. Yeah, New Orleans is going to be a blast, and I'm super honored to be the trip coordinator for that. It's interesting as I continue to make plans and everything for New Orleans. I just keep thinking about like, wow, like how much education and magic and everything is to be found like in your backyard, right? And like that's something that I think we forget too, is that you don't have to go far and wide to find these things. But I also like, it's just really great to have, like Karen was saying, those opportunities to gather and see people that you don't normally get to see face to face, and interact with those people and learn from them. Just as a whole in the mystery school and in all aspects of Sagittarius, one thing that I keep hearing being iterated from everyone who's speaking is that this program changes lives. It's a lifestyle change, and it's absolutely, I would not be where I am today without it. And I think that a lot of us that are in this meeting can say the same. So I think just the blessing and the responsibility of being able to pass that on to others is really amazing. So
Thank you, Ashara. So we do have a number of mystery school teachers in person that are throughout the country, and we now have one of our first in Italy, which I'm very excited about. Then we have another one that's in Hong Kong, which is really amazing as well. Rather than go through, I realize I'm going to send you some notes when we take a quick break. I won't have you send the file that I sent you, Debbie, because there's a typo in it I saw I need to fix first. But I'll send that into the classroom for you and email it out to everybody who signed up for this class. But we've got things all across, you know, both from Canada to England to Italy to now Hong Kong. But I'd like to open it up to any of our teachers that are currently in this room right now. Is there anybody who'd like to share anything? Just feel free to raise your hand. And if you don't want to share, you don't have to. Yeah, Selena.
You know, I'm going to speak. I just kind of wanted to tie on a little bit to what Karen was saying about the process of continued growth for the teacher as well. Every time you teach these classes, you're dipping into that current more deeply, and you find new levels of nuance and new gems that come out, and things that you were like, I know I studied this, but how did I miss this connection? Every single time, even after, you know, a decade or of doing it. And it's really, well, everyone has already said that, so I'm not gonna say that. It's really interesting to sort of watch that current take hold of a class and sort of see how they connect with each other and what richness they bring to the lessons. Every time I teach a class, I'm taking information from the last several classes worth of students and bringing in what I learned from them. So the class tends to get longer and longer every year, but it's really amazing. And you can really start to pick up patterns of things that are particular to a certain class or a certain time, or certain things that are going on even globally or within the tradition. So I absolutely love teaching. It's exhausting. The administrative part is exhausting, but always well worth it. So I see one of my students is here today. Hello, student. So yeah, it's great to share this, especially I'm in Mississippi, if that is of interest. So there's really not a lot as far as formal training around here. So it was a real blessing when I found the temple and was able to take the online school, and we've grown a beautiful community here as well. So it's exciting. Thank you, Christopher.
Thank you, Selena. I appreciate it. And just to speak about the administrative side of it, because I know that can be a drag at times. It can be a drag for us at times too. So don't feel differently about that. But part of the reason why we do that is actually in terms of equity. If you've been involved in other communities, sometimes people can go really far because they're friendly, but not because they've particularly done the work. Or sometimes somebody can be a really good witch and really good student, but can be sometimes cantankerous, and not go as far because they might have a strong personality in different ways. So we really try to separate the personal from the work. So there's been people that I've initiated that I'm not close to, and there's been people that I've not initiated who I am close to, but they didn't do the work. So it's really trying to have that record and to be balanced about it. And if you only knew, both in the online school and the administration and the leadership and working with the in-person teachers, how many times we'll pass an email to each other or have a conversation and say, am I being fair with this? Have I looked at this clearly? Is my tone okay? Is there a better way that I can handle this? Because we do want to be as clear as we can, even though we realize not all our communication will be the things that people want it to be. We do try to go out of our ways to have those records. So if somebody has a difficulty, and says, we had a difficulty not too long ago where someone looked like they were not going to graduate with the student, and they did all the work, and they were able to show me they did all the work, and I overrode that decision and did the initiation myself. So it's a way of balancing where sometimes personality conflicts come in, and to really be accountable to a staff, to be accountable to a group. So there's times when, people I work with in Sagittarius ministry might say, hey, Christopher, I don't agree with that decision, and we'll have a conversation with it. Or likewise, I'll talk to a teacher online and be like, hey, I think, you might be overreacting to this. So, a certain level of administration is to have that record so we can be as fair and equitable to everybody that we're working with. And to balance that impersonal challenge, because nobody likes to hear that they have to do something over again, or they didn't do a good job on something, but to really be able to justify why, and to know that you're not taking something personal out on somebody, which is very easy to do. And witches are strong personalities, and we've got our own things going on, and we've got deep passions that are happening. I don't want to minimize any of that, but I also want to make sure we don't do harm because of those things as well. So we also have a number of our teaching assistants, both current and former, that are here tonight. So if anybody who's a teaching assistant wanted to share anything, and there'll be a list of our current staff going on in the notes I send out. But if anybody would like to share anything, feel free to raise your hand. I'll open that up to class administrators too. If anybody who's doing any of the work in the mystery school would like to share. Yeah, Todd, please. Oh, I don't think we can hear you, Todd.
Sorry about that.
There you go.
I've been a teacher assistant 2 different times, once for Witchcraft 1, once for Witchcraft 3, mentored many years. And yes, I definitely have to agree. I learn stuff every time. It's wonderful, really wonderful, sharing the journey with the new students, especially I think year 1 is the most magical. And yeah, it's just been a wonderful experience. So I hope to continue doing it. And it's a great opportunity for anyone who really wants to take what they think they already know and really take it to a deeper level. I don't know, it's been a wonderful experience. So I hope to be even more involved in the future. So that's it.
And is anybody else who's involved in any of our group leaders, our study group leaders, like our Astral Travel Study Group, or Witches Runic Stones? Anybody who's involved in those like to share? Yeah, Christian, please.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful experience for me, and I really encourage people to get involved. The Astral Travel Study Group is going strong. We have wonderful discussions, we run it more like a discussion group than a class. I consider myself a facilitator rather than anything else. It's just a person to keep the conversation going. But I also find that the greater thing, and what I'm feeling from this discussion, is so much that it's one thing to get to receive teaching. It's another then to engage with that teaching and connect with it. And when you give back, you get so much more. When you engage with the material, when you give back to the organization, the personal evolution that you can go through is just, it goes into high gear. And I know every time I do something and I give back in some way, I know it bears gifts to me that are immeasurable. So, and that's also a way of a roundabout way of saying thank you to all of the people that make this happen, and that form the community, and especially for me, especially those in the Sagittarius ministry, which has been, just such a great blessing, I know, on so many people, myself included. So
thank you, Christian. Yeah. So does anybody who have any questions who's joined us today, anything you'd like to ask about Sagittarius ministry, anything that's not clear? I know that was sort of like a big info dump about all the temple history and all the things that we do, but I don't know how else to do it. So all right, then I'm going to suggest we take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back and do the Sagittarius rite, or excuse me, Sagittarius ritual that is a part of our ministry. So we're going to do it sort of as a guided journey. Debbie's going to be doing the physical part of the ritual, so we're going to put a camera on her altar. So people who are more visually oriented want to look at that, they'll have that. For people who want to do it more as a meditation, and I'll explain it before we go through it. But let's take a 5-minute break and we'll come back then. So thank you, everybody. Well, welcome back, everyone. So for those who are not familiar, our 12 ministries that I talked about, each one has a couple different rituals to it. So we have what we call the ministerial ritual, which is what we're going to be doing today for Sagittarius. And it's a basic introduction and honoring of the spirits of the ministry and the powers that we work with. It is interesting because if you do all 12 of the ministerial rituals over a period of time, you'll actually have connected to pretty much all the spirits, not just the 12 spirits, but all the spirits that are the primary spirits of the Temple of Witchcraft, including our animal allies, our fairy and angelic allies. Each ritual has a couple different entities to it. So the Sagittarius ritual talks about the mighty dead specifically, but also the concept of what we call the witch soul, or the first and last witch, the one sorcerer, the consciousness of witchcraft is a part of this. And as a part of this ritual, we do work and offering to forge a stronger connection with those inner plane teachers through the manifestation of the witch soul, through that wisdom of the witch. And we speak about the teachers of both the living and the dead. And a lot of the Eastern traditions, there's a lot more deference paid to our lineage of teachers. Often people will recite their teachers all the way down to what they call the root teacher, the teacher of whatever school of philosophy that they're practicing. And because we often tend to be very eclectic, we tend to forget that. So as we've kind of coalesced into this temple of witchcraft, part of this ritual is, and much of the material has come through my experiences, much of this ritual honors the teachers, the lineage of teachers that have brought me to share this wisdom and information with you. So we're going to be reciting, and most of those teachers, not all of them, but many of those teachers are still alive. So one of the teachers I honor in that lineage, many of you are familiar with, that one of my first and root teachers is Lori Cabot, and we also honor her teacher, Felicity Baumgardner. And then we're going to work with the mighty dead as the figures of sorcery and magic and witchcraft and priesthood through history. So it'll be a list and a lineage of occultists and witches and teachers, and just speaking their name revivifies and brings them to memory and to life and honors them, whether we speak to them directly or not. So there'll be a lineage of the mighty dead that we'll recite. As a part of this ritual, if you wanted to be really complex with it and doing it on your own, there's a list of a tea you can make that's a good psychic awareness dreamtime tea. So you can use it and take it and then have your meditation. Or you can take the tea and as a dreamtime tea you might have that evening contact with the mighty dead as a part of it. We have some red wine tonight as an offering, and so we'll make that as a part of the offering work that we're doing. But we'll also, you could do other offerings of, other types of herbal teas or other types of liqueurs that are there. But those are the primary aspects of it. So it's basically a recitation of the teachers of lineage that have brought us to where we are, a recitation of the teachers of the mighty dead. For some people, they can feel, oh, this is monotonous. I'm just kind of reading things off. I'd encourage you as you do it to have a rhythm to it, to feel it's like a prayer. To feel that there's a pattern to it, and sometimes just the cadence of listing names, whether they're names that are familiar to you or not, might lull you into a deeper trance. And the ones that are not familiar to you, or even as I recite names, you might be like, oh, that name sparked something in me. Maybe I should look up that person later. Maybe that person has a message. Maybe I need to know their story, or maybe they're going to come to me in a dream or a meditation. So some of us work with the mighty dead in a very nondescript way. It's just the mighty dead. It's just the hidden company. It's the shadows and the formless wisdom that comes through the many. And others like to work with the mighty dead like the saints, and they're calling on an individual entity from history whose story they relate to. And both of those are completely appropriate for the work that we do in Sagittarius ministry. So with no further ado, I would invite you just to take a few deep breaths and just get yourself centered. As we breathe in and we breathe out, just get ourselves centered, releasing anything from the day. Relax the muscles in our head and neck, and shoulders and arms, and chest and back and belly, lower back and hips and thighs, our knees and calves and shins, our ankles and feet, down through the soles of our feet and the tips of our toes, down through our arms and our fingertips. Be at peace. And we recognize the sacred space that is all around us. We call to the spirits of the north and to the east, to the south and to the west, to the above, to the below, and to the between. And we light our candles and call upon the gods. We call to the two who move as one in the love of the Great Spirit. We call to the goddess. We call to the God. We call to she who is the weaver of the web of all things. We call to he who is the singer and the song of all creation. And we call to the divine child of promise, the heart of all things. Hail and welcome. We light any incense, and with the smoke that rises, we call down the third ray. By the third ray of wisdom and cunning, we call to the one sorcerer. We call to the first witch, the last witch, and all witches in between. Illuminate us with witch fire. And we gaze upon the sigil of Sakaro, Sagittarius ministry. Wisdom and cunning. We open the way to the teachers of the mighty dead. Call upon you, Sakaro, 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 teacher of the mysteries of wisdom and cunning. Sakaro, open the way to the teachers of the mighty dead. We call to the spirits of the temple of witchcraft. We call to Tawathan, winged and horned serpent, spirit of the temple. May you guide us in this work. Hail and welcome. And we call to the spirits, to the ancestors, by the sacred words given to us, by the mighty dead themselves. Obrimos, obrados, verados, eximos. Obrimos, obrados, verados, eximos. Obrimos, obrados, verados, eximos. I am the key, I am the gate, I am the tree, watcher of fate. I am the roots, I am the stone, secrets of ages scriven on bone. I am the crown, I am the art, jewels of the mystery, bones of the art. I am the path, I am the way, keeper of crossroads forever this day. On the sacred crossroads in the center of the worlds, we call to the world between. We call to all the spirits of the living, and we call to all the spirits of the dead. We call to the hidden company, the company of our timeless tradition, brothers and sisters and others of the eternal Sabbat, you who gather close around the edges of our circle, you who have danced within this circle, be present here with us. We seek your wisdom. We are your descendants and followers of your ways. Hail and welcome. And by the powers of the skull and the wand, we call the teachers and elders of our lineage. We call to Felicity Bumgardner, Lori Cabot, Lynn Kay, Echo, Stephanie Rutt, Jan Brink, Sharon McLeod Nickmaka, Joanne Pennybool, Gary Smith, John Artemidge and Phyllis Brooks, David Dalton, Wendy Fogg, Christine Tolf, Steve Kenson, Dennis William Huck, Janet Farrar and Gavin Bone, R.J. Stewart, Christopher Giroux, Raven and Stephanie Grimassi, Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki. And take this time to call in your heart and mind your teachers living and dead. We offer blessings of will, love, and wisdom upon those who have brought us these teachings. We offer blessings of health, happiness, and holiness upon all those living who have brought us these teachings. We offer blessings of longevity, fulfillment, and illumination upon those who have brought these teachings. Blessed be. And we recite the names of the mighty dead. What is remembered lives. Shamhat, Imhotep, Ma'atkare Mutemat, Ka'amuast, Aconia Fabia Paulina, Aglonanke, Aristoclea, Cassandra, Arictho, Ratidia, the Witch of Endor, Amergin, Cathbad, Apollonius of Tinia, Quintus Aurelius Amachus, King Penda, King Arwald, Simon Magus, Saint Christopher, Hypatia, Honorius, Saint Cyprian, Hildegard of Bingham, Jacques de Molay, Joan of Arc, King Edward III, Giordano Bruno, Paolo Gapostotoro, Lavoisin, Alice Keitler, Angus Waterhouse, Isabel Godey, Biddy Early, Andro Mann, the Pendle Witches, Mother Shipton, Walpurga Hasmaninen, John Dee, Cornelius Agrippa, Elpheus Levi, John Cunningham, John Wrightson, the wise man of Stokesley, Tituba, John Winthrop Jr., Goody Ann Glover, Ann Hibbins, Margaret Jones, Catherine Harrison, Mary Barnes, Lydia Gilbert, Alcy Young, Hannon Crana Hovey, Paracelsus, Tamsin Blight, Count de Saint-Germain, Ambrose Bantam, Black Eagle, John Breakspear, Elsie Summers and Sally Summers of Southwest Harbor, Judith Howard, Old Nabby, Caroline Barnes, Betty Hazel, the Witch of Yazoo, Marie Laveau, Mrs. Patterson, Emma Hodringe Britton, Leonora White Crow Piper, Helen Duncan, Dion Fortune, Alistair Crowley, Lear Gandhi, Austin Osmond Spare, Gerald Gardner, Robert Cochran, Felicity Bumgardner, Adelma Grenier Simmons, Alex Sanders, Victor Anderson, Cora Anderson, Doreen Valente, Raymond Buckland, Raven Grimassi, and the many, many more across time and space, known and unknown, remembered and forgotten. Welcome. We offer this cup to you. Take this time in silence and stillness. Close your eyes, listen, feel, and allow the insights and the experiences to come and go, to commune with the mighty teachers, the mighty ones. You may see a shape gather at the edges of your space. You may see a silhouette or many silhouettes of robed figures. The mighty ones of our hidden company gathering along the edges, gathering along the edges. The mighty ones gather. And in your heart and mind, you may feel one or more step forward. They may remain hidden in mystery or reveal themselves. Commune, commune, commune. Ask any questions. Sometimes the best question can be, what do I need to know at this time? And you may be given a task, something to share or teach with others. And when you are ready, know that this can be just the beginning of a deeper conversation. But for now, say your farewell. give your thanks and say your farewells as we give license to depart. By the third ray of wisdom and cunning, I thank the one sorcerer, the first witch, the last witch, and all witches in between. Blessed be. I give thanks to the Lord and Lady, to Sakaro, the teacher of wisdom. I give thanks to Tawathon, spirit of the temple of witchcraft, and all spirits in the temple of witchcraft. I thank the mighty dead, the hidden company of our timeless tradition. Thank you for coming from the eternal Sabbat. I say farewell and give all spirits license to depart. May there only be peace between us. Hail and farewell. And I give thanks to the powers of the north and the west, powers of the south and the east, above, below, and between. Blessed be. And blessed be. Do whatever you need to ground and come back. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be. And welcome back, everyone. Are we all doing well? Does anybody have any questions? Or anything they'd like to share? Well, with that in mind, I just want to thank you all for being a part of our open house for Sagittarius Ministry. This is a lot of fun. I don't know if we'll do it every year, but it's a nice, good beginning to get folks to know a little bit more about what's going on in the inner workings of the temple and give people opportunities to participate more. So I'm going to turn our recording off.